dare to dream as we gaze upon the stars.
Every miner longs for eyes,
like a burger needs its fries.
Friendship never dies, the world is strong.
Flying without you is more than I can bear.
Keep looking over my shoulder,
hoping to see you there.
No one scans me down and blows me up like you do. Burns right through the armor of my heart.
Our hosts collide and everything goes pew pew.
Let us all unite so we can tear each other apart.
Come fly with us, won't you lend a helping hand? Come fly with us, let the good times never end. Lock it under and fly with us, and die with us, my friend. Come fly with us, won't you lend a helping hand?
Hello everyone, welcome to the next edition of Push to Talk. We have some special guests here today. Today we have CCP Denormalized with us, and CCP Denormalized, you are one of the senior DBAs there, is that correct? Can you guys hear me?
Yep. We can now.
Oh, good, excellent. A little wonkiness in Discord too, so I just introduced CCP Denormalized to everybody, and we also have CCP RAM and CCP Denormalized. You work on the database side, is that correct?
Yep. I'm database admin with CCP Games. Lots of fun.
Excellent. And CCP RAM, you're on the system administration side, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I've been with CCP since 2004.
Fantastic. So you've seen some of the...
Wow.
You've been here a long time. Longer than I've played the game, which is pretty impressive. That's pretty cool. And we're along with our normal crew. We've got McLeod up there, sporting the hat. You missed the shades, guys. They looked very cool. But Caleb made fun of him.
I don't wear the shades that often. Yeah.
Caleb made fun of him and he took him off. And we, of course, have Caleb with us, coming to us live over there.
Hey, guys.
And we have Billy Buffington back with us, first time in a long time. And Billy has begun to play Eve because Burn Jita drew him in.
On the dark side now.
Oh, damn.
So, yes, so it's going to be great. And we're going to have a lot of fun. So we're going to start off the day. I think we're going to talk about what the... I call you guys DevOps. Is that what you use in CCP terms, or do you call yourself something else?
It's a mix, pretty much. We're both DevOps and just CS admins on the infrastructure level as well.
Okay. So, and for our audience, those are the guys on the back end that do the heroic deeds that keep TQ up and running, in my opinion, having a pretty heavy DevOps background. I appreciate all they do, and we wanted to give them a little showcase and talk about it. So it's pretty cool.
I mean, you guys are pretty adept at using a fire extinguisher. I kind of guess. with the amount of fires that we tend to sort of put your servers under.
And they can feed hamsters in lemming numbers.
We've actually, throughout CCP, the years, we only had one blade going on fire, so it's all good.
See, we always talk about like servers going on fire when we kind of like in a sort of joking manner, but it has actually happened.
Yes,
We were told to take a picture down. We were not allowed once I won't say any names or anything, but once we posted it, then we quickly got a call from a particular hardware vendor and said, could you please take that picture down? Oh, okay.
Wow. They really don't appreciate it the way we do.
This is why server rooms should have live video feed.
Some do, actually.
It would just have been amazing.
For security, I don't know if
that live. Oh, it's on fire! Literally.
And for the record, they probably didn't use fire extinguishers. I'm sure they used the special gas to put that.
Halon.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. There's
Halon and there's FM200. I don't know which one they had. So yeah.
Either way, CFC.
Either way, you don't want to be in the room when it goes off.
Yeah.
So let's talk about a little bit of the history, right? Caleb, you brought that up, and CCP RAM, you've been around for a lot of that. How much has that changed, and what are some of the things you used to see that the new hardware really let you get around?
Tell us about the actual first potatoes.
Actually, in the beginning, we've always had blade centers running TQ. We tried to mirror TQ to CC as well, making sure that both were running like in a unison, so to say. But CC has actually been left behind. But we started with the LS20 blades, which is about 10 plus years ago since we got that. But then we just gradually updated, always using the same vendor, always the same hardware, so to speak. But it's only with TQ Tech 3 that we actually deviated from that and went to the flex chassis.
Just out of curiosity, did you have that actually at launch? So was that actually also running a late beta?
At launch, it was actually hosted by a tele company here in Iceland, so CCP did not run the servers themselves.
Okay. That explains a lot.
In 2004, late 2004, CCP terminated the contract with that company. Also with they ran the customer support as well, so all the GMs and the hardware was moved to CCP in 2004.
That makes sense, because that was about when we didn't have any rollbacks anymore.
Yeah, true.
A point to that question on things that we maybe don't necessarily see anymore. On the database side of things have progressed, maybe even in a different direction so much than the other server hardware like Souls and stuff. For us, what we see is back in the day, first when I started, there were RAM SAN devices, right, with flash memory and stuff like that. We actually don't use those anymore now. It's more just enterprise level SSDs. But the amount of memory that we see in the boxes is just gone up by such a huge margin that we really don't have to hit the disks so much anymore. When we can cache half or 2/3 of the database in memory, we can get by with slightly less performant disks. So we can really kind of optimize things that way.
So talking about the first iteration, how frequently have you guys actually changed or upgraded the hardware, and what's about the average cadence, like interim between upgrades?
Years, CCP RAM, is that about right?
Yeah, that's about right. There have been some servers that have lasted longer. For example, we had the Everest node, which used to be the most powerful node we had for hosting fleet fights and stuff like that. I think we ran about 4 years past its warranty, something like that.
So we are about on Tech 5 now.
Pretty much, yeah.
There's a fun story about the Everest node. Back when, I don't know, maybe about 6 months before the Everest node came online, we were working on a internal project to see what is the fastest SQL server that we could get to be able to see what kind of fleet flight we would be able to support. And so at the time, there were no real like hardware that we could be involved with or anything like that. So we started to look at off-the-shelf hardware. And so at the time, we had a technical director that was all over this kind of fun project stuff. And so we ordered a boatload of parts from all kinds of like PC vendors. And so our goal, this machine actually was pulled out on FanFest. I forget the year. It was probably 2010 or 2011, but it was this Frankenstein monster of hardware put together, all water cooled. The motherboard was water cooled, the RAM was water cooled, everything was water cooled. But it was like literally this strapped together machine that was 2 chassis stuck together. I remember working on it. We cut and had aluminum almost funnels for the air venting. I remember using a grinder to cut this metal down, and we were bending it, and we went to some industrial shop in Reykjavik to get these panels folded so it would fit inside the chassis and everything else. And so we end up with this 4 or 5U ugly thing that we were pushing, I don't know, 4.5 gigahertz at the time. To get it all built, we're like, okay, now how can we smuggle this into the data center? It's got like water cooling pipes sticking out of it everywhere. It's like, this is going to be crazy. Maybe 2 weeks after we had this machine, we're doing internal testing. There was an IBM rep that we knew came in, and he was like, guys, we have this secret machine. We can't really tell you a whole lot about it right now, but, and everybody above us was like, all right, fine, ditch this ugly, crazy Frankenstein creature, and we'll just go with this. And that was the Everest node. And for a long time, I'm not sure how long, but I'm pretty sure it was some months afterwards that we received it. We weren't even allowed to talk about it. We were not allowed. We had to sign NDAs and everything. First when we got that machine, because nobody was allowed to kind of discuss it that much.
Wow, that's insane.
That's a little background on Everest. I don't think we knew.
And play around with it.
Yeah, I said I don't think that's background on Everest that we knew, did we?
I knew that it was like I'd heard that it was. I didn't realize you had a Frankenstein machine together that was like completely mental. But I had heard that you had a crazy sort of top secret thing from Intel.
Yeah, that
was definitely out there.
Yeah. We dragged out, Ram, you must remember, we dragged out the Frankenstein machine at FanFest, and I'm pretty sure it had either a inflatable cow or an inflatable sheep sitting on top of it.
The cow is still at CCP. It was the donkey that went missing during that FanFest.
This may or may not have been an adult-oriented blow-up animal. Which was pretty funny because kids would come into our operations room and like, oh, look at the cow, look at the sheep. And they're like, oh yeah, no, please don't touch that.
Oh god, please no.
That's crazy.
Oh well.
So let's talk about a little bit where you've gone to the newer hardware, some of the advances that you've had there. Particularly, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't you replicating the database back to Iceland? And if you are, is that real time or is there some delay on that?
We're not replicating it yet, but I would guess within the next month or so we will be. We've had Singularity replicating between the sites just as like proof of concept and to check latencies and stuff like that. We will not be doing synchronous replication. The latency, 40 milliseconds, is just way too high. And typically synchronous replication like that is really just within the same data center. So we will be doing async replication, and the time delay, depending on what's happening on the DB server at the time, is anywhere from sub 1 second to like a minute or so. It really depends. There's never really any in-game activity that affects this. It's more our operational maintenance, like index work or statistics being updated, that generates a lot of log activity, tens of gigabytes. You know, when we're going through tables that are 300 gigabytes in size, that generates a tremendous amount of logs, transaction log activity. So all of that's got to be replicated then, and we can get delayed a little bit there, but usually it's no more than, I don't know, a minute or 5 minutes or so.
Can you guys talk a little bit about some of the ideologies on how to do your whole database thing, and maybe a little bit of story time on the big database change back in history when you changed format?
What do you mean change format?
Okay, I'm not a techie, but you went from one type of architecture of database to another, and there was a lot of buzz on the forums about it, and it, according to you guys, it basically solved a lot of problems.
I think they just upgraded SQL Server, right? It's not really.
No, the entire architecture was changed, right? It's quite a long time ago now, but I'm pretty sure that you guys pretty much shift from one database type to another.
It's probably maybe a hardware iteration or perhaps a version upgrade. But so I've been with the company for about 8 years now, and as far as I know, it's almost always been Microsoft SQL Server. I mean, we have gone from the various editions. When I started, we were SQL 2005, I think, and just after I started, then we upgraded to 2008. We're on 2016 right now, and I'm pushing to go to 2017 as soon as possible. There's a lot of really cool technology there. Rand, you know, but I'm almost positive that it's always been SQL Server, though.
Yeah, it's always been SQL Server. I don't think we've ever had like major framework changes to it, though.
Yeah, I think the only thing that you guys changed in SQL Server, other than the version, I think didn't you go to a flavor of always on locally, as well as probably what you're using to replicate?
Oh, we thought about it, but we're still just doing traditional 2-node active passive type clustering with a shared SAN backend.
Okay, because that always on is wonky. In my opinion,
I think
it's a little bit wonky, right?
I think maybe what Caleb was talking about when you went to a 64-bit.
That might have been it. I just remember a lot of techie, nerdy debates back and forth on the forums, and a lot of promises of this is going to fix everything.
Oh, it makes a big deal in database land.
I'm pretty sure that it actually did. It had huge performance benefits.
Because the Eve universe was sort of quite close to hitting its maximum item limit, right?
Yeah, for sure. 32-bit integer that was running out. We've had that in a number of places. I think this one in particular that we're talking about is probably the inventory system. That was right around when I started as well. So I don't exactly remember all of the problems that were occurring, but I'm sure there were a lot of behind-the-scenes cleanup that would have to happen to ensure that we had room for new items to be created and that sort of thing. But when the change to the 64-bit integer for the item IDs happened, that just freed up just room that people were like, oh my god, okay, at least now things are not going to explode.
Yeah, because you guys were back at those times, you were utilizing the the downtime at 11 to basically delete stuff that you needed in order to actually free up some itemization space. I think.
How much did
running out of IDs scary stuff?
Yeah.
How much did adding citadels add to your overhead? Did that hit the backend database, or was that more a front end server hit? Do you guys know? Do you guys look at that stuff?
I don't remember any huge things on the database side, but I do know with certain deployments that happen and stuff, like it's really, really hard to test Eve at the scale that you guys put the servers through their paces. As much as, we've got tons of hardware on the back end, and we're able to, the QA department is able to do regression testing and all of that stuff at really, really high levels, but still, like, just the between what we can simulate and what you can do is sometimes scary. And there absolutely have been times where releases have come out and features are there, and the feature just has some code tweaking at the database level that we need to do, that we need to change. The way that SQL interacts with data, depending on how the tables are designed, concurrency updates and deletes and all of that kind of thing can really play havoc on the server. So if it's not designed in such a way that takes into account the high level of load that you guys put on the cluster, it can really cause problems.
Yeah, I do think that CCP got the toughest quality assurance team in their player base. It's like, we are basically experts at pushing everything to the limit and breaking your guys' stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hey, I want to take a second here. The K-Man and who was it? Ardoy, both up their sub. 36 months for K-Man and 12 for Ardoy. So thank you very much, guys, for those subs. We do appreciate it. And I noticed we got quite a few follows, so thank you to all the guys that followed too. So I just want to shout that out in there. Take a little break here.
Epic. I just kind of wanted to ask, like, denormalize, like, before you came to CCP, were you a database administrator, or in that sort of line, that area of in another company before CCP?
So I've been a DBA for a really long time, probably 20 years or so now, but not. I've never worked for a company at the scale that CCP has, and that's actually what drew me to the company. I was playing the game, and I knew of Eve, and I was happening to do some research for my own company, and I stumbled upon this white paper from IBM partnered with CCP, and I was like, oh wow, interesting. And this was about the Ramsans and SQL Server and Ramsans. And so that was really exciting to me, and I looked into it further, and I couldn't believe, wow, like this company is actually using SQL Server. It really, really surprised me. I had no idea, and I didn't even really think about what they were using as a backend. It just so happened that when I looked further, they had a DBA position opened, and over the course of 3 or 4 months, we contacted each other, and then CCP flew me and the family to Iceland, and I stayed there for a long time.
Nice,
really,
nice.
really cool.
I was just kind of wondering, because I was wondering how CCP's like server kind of setup, how it differs in comparison to sort of like other enterprise level server setups. Because I've heard that it's different in some rather unique ways. But just how different as well?
I'd actually say it's not really that different at all. It's really just the transactional load that's on the database. I mean, for the most part, like the backend database stuff is pretty standard. We have a 2-node active passive cluster. It's all like kind of standard hardware, SAN backend. It's just that the nature of a custom application like this that's constantly being developed, with new features and everything else. It's really not difficult, but it requires constant tuning. Things are constantly changing. Different things happen. Players can cause issues that affect the server. It's rare that happens, but it does. We're always getting updates and new releases and things. So the database load is changing quite frequently, but it's just always high load. So compared to my other jobs, for instance, I've had places where the servers may have been similar grade, but just the throughput has just not been there.
So you are almost literally the Formula One pit team of database and tech.
Absolutely. There are not really a whole lot of places that push transactions per second like CCP does.
How do you compare on scale to, say, things like banking?
Probably the places that push higher than we do. We do about 8 to 10,000 transactions per second, with about half of that coming through the API and third-party developers just hitting whether it's ESI or the old XML API and stuff like that. 10,000 transactions per second is quite high, but I mean, we're really only dealing with I don't know how many subscribers we have at the moment, but like even if we go back to our peak, I don't know what that was, 500,000 people. Banks where you're talking millions of people, maybe, certainly higher.
Yeah, it's just because performance-wise, and we should segue into that and the history. One of the things that we've talked about before the show is that performance-wise, when it comes to things like, well, this is maybe a little bit my pet peeve, but the way that the EVE market has so many transactions, and compared to, say, other games that always has issues with lag and crashes and stuff like that when they're trying to run their marketplace, EVE pretty much came out of the fold initially, and well, I wouldn't say that everything worked perfectly. There was a few performance issues, but it was so high grade and it was just pretty much seamless. And then, of course, if you add the features, it was just mind-blowingly new and extremely unique to the gaming community.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree.
Did you have any? Okay, that's maybe more CCP RAM. Did you guys have any consultancy with actual people in, say, banking or financial industry before you actually build all this? Because it's still unique. There is no game that actually runs a proper exchange-based market out there.
No, I mean, this is just a CCP built from scratch, pretty much.
So you Frankensteined it.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, we like to invent the wheel, and we do it frequently.
Yeah, Caleb,
that is amazing.
Caleb wants to know when he's going to get futures and options, and
I'm lobbying this year at FanFest. I'm going to find Nawal and Quant, and I'm going to lobby as hard as I can for exotic financial products.
He wants short sells. He wants everything. Okay.
Player-to-player billing and player insurance.
As soon as you do that, Aerith is gonna, develop some sort of.
Oh yeah, he's gonna break it.
For it.
He's gonna break it hard.
So yeah. Speaking of Aerith, since we invoked Aerith's name, Scythe, didn't you have some interesting Aerith information to share with us?
To
take a little break from the
information. Tech. Yeah, so wonderful Aerith information, everyone. Aerith is on his first kill mail since 2015. He is participating in a wonderful event some of you may have heard of called Burn Jita. And he is just whelping Vindicators into our kills, and it's beautiful.
Burn Jita isn't happening. You're crazy.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's called Slightly Walking on Coals in Industrials. We had renamed it for the kids.
I can't wait to get back to that.
For the kids. Let's put it this way. I'm sitting here going, how long is the show today? I need to kill more freighters.
Go back and kill freighters. We're done with you. Good. Thanks for the update from the front line site.
Yeah, Aerith Vindicator kills confirmed. 10 out of 10.
Okay.
Looking for corpses.
Yeah, he'll
I think the thing is he wanted to participate, but he was like, I'm not stooping so low as to be killed in the coercer.
He refuses to fly anything Tech 1 or under faction.
Like, no, it will be at least 500 mil when I die.
He's gonna keep his kill board right.
All right. That's your news from the front.
Can we talk future? Because I am very excited, especially because we've just had this year of basically pulling out all the problem children in EVE, right? You guys must have been enjoying that. All the things that was issues have been basically ripped out of EVE, and now you're even launching things like the new chat system, so even that thing is gone.
That's really interesting how things are progressing compared to back in the day when everything would be just this one big monolith. But right now, yeah, actually not even right now. For the last number of years, there's been a big push to start pulling things out of the monolith so that we can start to offer people various ways to interact with that better. Scales better. We can like the chat is going to be running in the cloud now, and so we start pulling things out of our data center and offering it up.
Yeah, you're outsourcing that, right? Entirely.
Not so much outsourced, but it's just hosted. It's just Amazon hosted, so it's all internal stuff. That's developers that are doing it. But yeah, it's just rather than in our own data center, we can scale better by utilizing Amazon and places like that.
What's that going to mean for performance, right? How is that going to affect the load on the servers?
I'm sure it won't.
It should lower the load that we see in the database and probably on the soul nodes as well. I think I remember seeing an email where people were discussing the load on the particular Sol nodes for the chat system. I don't know the number, but I'll say 50%. It was certainly a lot higher than I thought it was. I was really surprised when I seen it. I was like, okay, well, shit. No wonder you guys are trying to pull this out and move it away.
That's insane.
Are you really logging chat in the DB server?
Not for long. Much longer.
What did you say? I missed you.
Yeah,
yeah, you're cutting out. Denormalized. Is it just
we're
me?
losing?
No, I can't
we're
hear
losing
me now.
denormalized.
No.
The network will come back. I wouldn't worry about it.
Oh, I got dropped out a little bit ago. Might be spreading.
Welcome back, RJ.
You've given us your internet disease.
But if that's like in terms of that chat system, like if it's almost 50% of the load on Sol systems, that's crazy.
Imagine when we get 6,000 of us in a system and we're all like spamming, right?
So to be clear, it's certainly not that much load on all of the solar systems. I mean, there is a chat service within the monolith, and so that gets loaded on certain specific Sol nodes. Like we have, I don't know, probably like 100 different services within the monolith, we'll say, and we do mapping across all 240 of our Sol nodes. Like some Sol nodes don't even run a solar system simulation at all, but they just run like market, or they run character services nodes, or chat systems or something like that.
That's cool.
Okay.
So one thing of interest to me is you've got a number of servers, and you've obviously got far more solar systems than you have servers, right? Are you guys instancing the solar system within the node, or are you using something like VM technology to kind of move things around and keep everything balanced?
Nothing is moved around during a live run. So servers just host either, it can be a region of solar systems, constellation, or just specific solar systems. What we do during downtimes when the server is coming up, it will map the systems accordingly to a specific server. So that, for example, we have Cheetah, and that always goes to it's a place on its own, so it never shares, say, a CPU with other solar systems. It will always make sure that it has the best performance, for example. But yeah, we don't move systems live.
Did you guys actually have eyes on things at this latest big fight, at the $1 million fight?
Yeah, the supposedly $1 million fight, yeah. I was actually online and monitoring the server that the system was running on.
Can you guys do a little bit of a post-mortem? Because I think it was Falcon that was trying to keep us informed on the state of the servers. And we got some crazy numbers about how much memory was actually being used. And I think we got those numbers just before it started going crazy and not really being able to take the strain.
If I remember correctly, that specific system was using probably getting close to 100 gigabytes of memory. But the CPU was, of course, just at 100% CPU until well after the fight as well, while people were still going out. And it wasn't until maybe a couple of hours after the fight that the CPU load started dropping a little bit.
What about the myth about the cap? Because I do remember that someone mentioned that there used to be this theoretical cap that you guys had actually put on systems, so it actually couldn't go above, was it 5,000 or 6,000? And it seems as if when we hit that, that was when things started going a little bit weird and people couldn't actually log in and some people were cut out. Is that just a total urban myth, or could something like that actually have been in effect?
Urban myth. We don't have a cap on players doing like fleet fights and stuff like that.
You guys pretty much make that yourselves.
Yeah, that's our job.
Well, that's the thing. Like, if you know, it is one of those cases when, it must be kind of slightly aggravating for you guys as well. Is whenever you, whenever we, or whenever you guys give us some more headroom, we somehow seem to eat it up straight away, and you're just like, oh.
Well, yeah, it happens all the time. I mean, back in the days when I started, I mean, just a couple of hundred players, and the node would crash. But nowadays we get obviously tight die, but we had more than 6,000 players in one system, and the server was fine, pretty much, except for one CPU core going to 100%.
Yeah, I kind of had a few questions actually about the hardware aspect of the fleet fight nodes, if that's okay. We know that most of the the actual simulation that people interact with in game are done on the Sol nodes. Are those nodes like? I mean, I guess in terms of server blade architecture and stuff, like you are running a multi-core in that particular blade. Even though the Sol node only really uses, as far as we know, it only really uses one core to process everything. Are the other cores utilized for other aspects related to that, or are they pretty much idle? In which case, does it make sense to switch those off in the BIOS and then use them as heat exchangers?
We use most of the CPUs for simulation. One solar system may be on one core, and we may have a chat service or a market service or something on a different CPU. And what we've seen is that even though one CPU goes to 100%, we don't see any impact on the other ones. It's just that one CPU, if there would be multiple solar systems, for example, on that CPU, then of course all the solar systems within that CPU would be impacted. But the server itself handles it fine, and we even have spare CPUs for the OS, and just all of this shipping with it being idle.
So it doesn't really make too much sense in terms of turning off those CPUs when you could potentially be using those CPUs for other areas of the game,
Not really. I mean, we've had hyperthreading on, we've had disabled hyperthreading, and we don't see much performance gain doing that. So we have hyperthreading on now, and I mean, mostly the cluster is just doing fine. It's mostly idle.
Yeah, because there's only been I've seen a few things online in terms of basically mostly centered around people overclocking and trying to get really high is it IPC ratings, and questions basically about should I turn off XYZ cores in the BIOS in order to basically use them as additional heat exchangers for to actually get rid of to dissipate heat. But I was just kind of wondering whether that's possible.
I mean, we did this. I mean, we've tested a lot of scenarios. We did this with the Everest node, for example, and there was no noticeable, performance gain on fleet fights and stuff like that when we did that. So
that's unfortunate.
A small, more simplified version of question: what is the big hatred and the top three thing that actually causes issues with load and performance in the game, design-wise?
Obviously, fleet fights. But I mean, server-wide, that's the only strain on the servers right now. But there are others. Maybe denormalize can go through for the DB side, but on the servers, just fleet fights.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's pretty much just 3 things. One note, when I was trying to interrupt earlier, I like the idea of the heatsink thing, and this is the same as in Eve, right? When you space your modules properly, so when you overload, so it's like a heatsink every second module, or is that a thing in the past, or do people still do that? So when you overload it, you know, you don't burn out certain things?
Totally still do that. I know that I have loads of ships that are set up specifically like that.
In terms of performance on the database side, so we rarely ever see anything in game that affects the DB box. What we do see though is just the nature of SQL itself. So, for instance, we had an issue yesterday. I don't think it affected anything, but it did cause a large spike in the DB. What ends up happening is that whenever we do maintenance, whether it's like index updates or statistics updates or something like that, it will cause a store procedure to recompile. And based on the nature of Eve and the way that data is structured within the tables, the very first call to a stored procedure that has been recompiled, SQL will then go and it will like compile a query plan for that based on the parameters that were passed in that very first time. Sometimes that particular call may be this really, really weird parameter that was passed in. And so SQL will then generate a plan for that particular value. But maybe that was like a 1% of the data, whereas 99% of the other data is completely different. What happens then is that it picks a very suboptimal plan for 99% of the calls, and then that just makes a complete run on the box. Maybe every other call except that one now needs to read 50 gigs of data or 100 gigs of data. Maybe it decides to do a full scan on the inventory table instead of using a particular index that would, you know, take tiny amounts of reads. Now it literally has to read 100 gigabytes for every single call. This is probably one of the biggest things that hits us on the database side is bad query plans. SQL is really good at doing things in generic terms, and the way that it's designed is that it wants have to give these index hints and things like that. But based on how developers create tables and the way that the data is stored within those tables, sometimes, and we've done this in the past, we have to say, SQL, sometimes you're just dumb and we're going to tell you exactly what to do. Don't try to be smart and pick the best plan, but just do exactly as we tell you so that you don't end up making this really, really horrible decision based on 1% of the data, whereas 99% of it, you know, is just what we want. So these bad query plans, and they can kill a server in seconds. If we get 10,000 transactions a second and a proc happens to get recompiled with a really bad plan, 10,000 calls, like boom, we're dead. Max CPU, and at that time, maybe we also have now 9,000 transactions that are starting to queue up, and maybe we're able to recompile that proc in time before it kills everything, but we've still got now 9,000 calls that have to finish with this bad query plan. And then we have to decide, do we want to let the run continue and just let them finish, or should we just kill the entire server and just restart? Because people could be having an extremely bad time depending on what particular call, you know, went crazy. Inventory things, for instance, you know, if nobody can undock or anything like that, then obviously we'd probably just kill the server. Emergency restarts, in most cases, unfortunately, are typically caused by database runs like that.
We've rarely ever had issues with that, but there's been, God, when was it? It was like a few years ago, I think, maybe. There was that one issue where you guys literally had to restart and figure out something.
Chat is kind of foreshadowing the next question. When is the next tech upgrade about to hit us, hardware-wise?
It's gonna be a while yet. I mean, so far the hardware we currently have, it's just performing extremely well. It shortened the deployment times of the code for Eve and stuff like that. So, I mean, while we can still keep downtime within the allotted time, 15 minutes, we should be fine. But I mean, in a year, maybe 2, we will have to look into other things. But we are always being approached by vendors who who want us to like test CPUs and stuff like that. So.
Oh, that's cool.
Will it ever be technologically feasible to not have downtime at all?
It's been a goal for CCP for probably 10 years, maybe more, to just eliminate downtime. I mean, I've gone through the 1 hour downtimes down to having it less than 5 minutes. I think the best one was like 4 minutes and some 40 plus seconds. Hopefully we can get rid of it completely. It's gonna take a while, but we should get there sometime.
Yeah, I mean,
so it is technologically
moment...
feasible, right? Theoretically, it could be done.
Absolutely, yeah.
That has to be into it. Overspoke Bram there. It's really just a matter of developer time that needs to go into it. That's not to say that it's a trivial task to do. There are some systems in place that heavily utilize downtime. It's just a matter of identifying what needs to be done and then weighing how worth it is it, I guess, if you have a full feature team to get rid of downtime to save 5 minutes there versus them having to maybe fix other bugs or features or whatever.
It's much more coding time rather than, actual hardware-based aspects of it.
It's all coding.
Yeah, and I mean, there are like an initiative, new features. They should not and never should rely on downtime. And we are taking stuff like the chat system, for example, out of the let's call it the Eve monolith, I guess. So hopefully soon we can actually, get rid of it. Well, maybe not soon, but at some point in time, get rid of downtime completely.
Stillman says 2019. I think that's going to hit the mark pretty well.
Yeah. Well, I liked his other comment. Eve needs downtime so we can all go take a shower.
Yeah, they will keep downtime around. It's just not actually happening on the hardware and the servers. They just lock us out.
Downtime is here literally to break the cycle and remind us all that we're human. We need to go and do something.
Can't we do like seasonal downtime thing so it's based on time zones? So it goes down for like 2 hours according to the time zone, so we can get some sleep or a shower and some food.
We've had discussions about moving the downtime, but with all the numbers we went through, this is the best time. But yeah, I mean, we need food at CCP, so I mean, and you guys need to shower, obviously, and so downtime, yeah, maybe we'll just stay for as it is.
You should do like the biological clock, right? You should do the running biological clock, so it's like 28 hours, and then it just moves around naturally.
Well, the issue there is like, because everybody in the world is connecting to the server, like it's not sharded in any way, shape, or form. Wherever you're putting the downtime, it's going to be prime time in some area of the world. So you're going to piss off someone somewhere.
Well, that's the fairness of doing a running clock, right? If you did a 26 hours day in Eve, then you couldn't speculate on time zones anymore on downtime.
Can you imagine
charts and graphs put together by I forget Explorer, CCP Explorer, when we were investigating changing downtime, and so it was like the nice world graph and then showing the line of when various time zones logged in and stuff. And I think it was determined that the best possible downtime would have been like 6 a.m. GMT when nobody is in the office and all of that. So I mean, we would have literally had to change working hours of all of the developers and everybody in Iceland to come in hours earlier to be able to do what we needed to do during downtime for deployments and all that kind of stuff. Nobody really wanted to do that.
That's all the data you guys were mining when you did the MoMA project, right? The modern art thing.
No, I don't think it was that.
The whole when people come online and when they log off and visualizing that over time, that was the graphic stuff that was used at the MoMA exhibition.
Some of that data absolutely could have been used for the same type things, repurposed for the downtime discussion. Yeah.
I just love that whole graphic thing. That looked amazing, where you could just see how players came online and when they went off, and that it was like mind blowing.
Was there a lot of work done from a DevOps perspective to minimize the impact of software upgrades, or was that something else that that went down?
I mean, obviously, I mean, on the server side, we of course make sure that the downtime never goes past 15 minutes. So with the flex charges we have now, we have one out of rotation, so to speak, and that one we will do the OS updates and firmware updates and stuff like that, re-image all the souls and the proxies that are on that chassis, and then swap one at a time throughout the week. And so within a week we can just have everything up to date.
Okay, with regards to that, I wanted to quickly ask Eric, like with regards to that and server software upgrades or software updates and that kind of thing. I mean, one of the relatively recent things that kind of happened in a sort of hardware software kind of fashion that did impact a lot of people or a lot of things around the world was the Meltdown Inspector kind of hardware bugs. Like, has that kind of really affected you guys a lot at all, or is it just one of those things?
It affected the sysadmins for sure. So when it hit, we of course need to go in to get the patches that we needed, both firmware for the VM environment and all that. But we only put it on the test servers, so it never goes out to TQ until we've tested it thoroughly on all of our test pretty much environments. I mean, for this instance, when we had been testing that particular patch, it started getting pulled from VMware. They just said, don't patch with this. Then shortly after it was Microsoft, they even pulled it, so it never actually hit TQ in any way or form. But the performance hits that we saw was that the stuff that was put in the cloud, we got like a 100% CPU increase, but on like Sol and proxy servers, like the hardware, it actually gained performance.
Yeah, because it's more a multi-threaded kind of aspect.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, it doesn't really affect the Sol nodes that much because they're single-threaded.
Yeah,
which is pretty cool.
And all hardware and stuff like that. So the virtual environment was hit harder than the hardware from what we saw.
That's pretty epic, actually. I bet that was a big weight off your mind.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
To change gears a little bit, how much influence do you guys actually end up having on things like developers that are doing actual design stuff? I'm asking this because I remember watching one of the presentations from the graphics team where they were working on some new feature and it looked awesome and everyone loved it, and then someone did some number crunching, and if you guys tried to launch that on the live server, it would basically overload the CPUs like everywhere. How much of that do you guys get to catch before it actually goes too far in the development process?
Most of the time it's too late, but in recent years it's been much better. I mean, it's okay for developers to, of course, create new features and make cool stuff, but I mean, when we were kind of left out of the loop to begin with, they often came with us, okay, this is a feature we have, it works locally for me and everything's fine, but then they don't account for, like, of course, we have a network environment that is sort of a living beast pretty much, and so whatever if you're connecting to specific things, it just won't work. But when you have a local environment, you have just on a one IP address and everything works. But it's gotten a lot better, and we usually, go through like design meetings and our network admins try to say that this is what we can do, but if you want to do this, we have to like host like this and stuff like that. And it's much better than it used to be.
We are considered a service department, and so really we exist to help the developers make their vision happen. So if they have some crazy idea, and then we simply say, okay, guys, well, what we have is just not going to support it. No, this is hypothetical, but then it's really up to them or their managers or whatever to make a business case and say, oh, well, we have this super cool feature and we think it's going to do this for the game, but we need $1 million in hardware to be able to support it. And then we start like doing more hardware. And if the business case is there for it, then so be it.
So, and on that note, we should segue to when can we do 10,000 player fights?
I think that's more of a software development side rather than hardware development.
Yeah.
But like, I have to kind of wonder whether Optane technology will actually help in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not in the performance, like the sole performance kind of thing, but maybe in the database kind of performance. But I don't think we're really hitting any kind of headroom.
I love how chat is saying that we will never get there. It's like pretty much exactly the same comment would have been the case when we said that 5,000 players would be in the same system. So never say never.
Dude, I remember a time when, people were asking for bookmarks in space. And, there was CCP devs that were saying, it's never going to happen. It's not possible. It's just not possible. And now we have it. So, never say never.
Let's put it this way. This is the game where we can get the most number of players in any system to fight against each other, and even going across multiple systems. It's amazing what Eve does, right? And, in defense of CCP RAM and CCP Denormalized we've got here, if those developers would write a little more efficient code, their job would be a little easier. Right, Billy?
Always.
Because we've heard these. I mean, it's like a day at work here. What we're talking about. It's kind of funny for me.
I mean, if we can have players in the system not fighting each other and not, putting out drones and fighters, we might actually get more players. But no, I mean, we are sort of at the limit at the last fight. But yeah, we need developer time to maybe get past that, unless we get Intel to just create a single CPU that is like extremely fast.
So Rendis has faith in CCP. He predicts that we'll put 40,000 goons into one grid by 2020. So there we go. We heard it here first.
Star Trek hardware. It will happen.
So when is CCP gonna buy their first quantum processor?
When is Eve
Just out of interest
coming out, like Star Trek and Holodeck coming out?
No.
I guess it comes out 2020 as well.
Epic.
Apparently, Rendis thinks so.
All our dreams, 2020.
No, I mean, I think what you guys do with TQ and keeping it up. I mean, if we look over time here, we used to have software patches that would last almost 12 hours, sometimes longer, right? Now we're out 15 minutes.
Yeah, so the longest I remember right now is probably the Apocrypha expansion. I think I was at the office for 32 hours.
Yeah, that was a long one.
Yeah, and then we have other sorts of outages. But yeah, with the TQ hardware Tech 3, we've actually managed to speed up the deployment process of the Eve code. And we have changed a lot of stuff with the download on demand. So we don't actually have to build as much as we used to for clients and stuff like that. So yeah, deployment takes, I would say, roughly 4 minutes without any long-running DB updates and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. That's just amazing to me.
Yeah, can I ask a stupid question? I know this is a little bit lowbrow tech-wise, but seriously, how come Eve can actually do what it does and no other game is even remotely in the same range? What exactly is the secret to the design of Eve that makes it possible to have this many people fighting each other at once?
You guys push us to do it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're getting pushed all the time, and it's just dedication. Everybody that works on Eve absolutely loves Eve. I mean, I used to play Eve a lot back in the day, but working on it now, it's not as much as then. But every developer I talk to, I mean, every day, they love Eve. They want to make it the best there is.
Now, theoretically, right, if there's rumors about CCP doing some sort of classic avatar-based MMO, theoretically, if a game like that came out and you guys used your knowledge on architecture and how to actually make all this possible, how many people could theoretically be fighting each other in a classical avatar-based game run by CCP?
All of them.
It's really difficult to say. I mean, we tried with the Incarna stuff. That didn't go so well.
Oh my god.
Yeah, but
understatement.
Yeah, that was built on an in-house engine, as you can say. But with the engines we have out now, it's really difficult to say. The network stack behind, like in the backend, that has a lot to do with how many players we can get, within one system or whatever. So I mean, it's really difficult to say.
But would you,
in terms of
business, right? Would you actually be able to push the envelope and actually deliver something that was way beyond what you see in other avatar-based MMOs?
With the team we have, and the teams we have, yeah, absolutely. I think with dedication and time, we could do it.
Because it's one of those things that we often don't really talk about much in the Eve media, that we usually like to heckle you guys, right? But we forget that some of the things that, especially on the tech side, that you have delivered over these last 15 years is pretty much unique and mind-blowing, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't think there is one single person at CCP that knows everything about what's happening, but the backend and everything that we have is written within CCP. So, I mean, we can go to the moon if we want to, so to say.
Because if you go back to CCP RAM in 2004 and told him what the performance was now, wouldn't you be a little bit surprised?
Yeah, I mean, I would laugh at him. I joined just before the Exodus expansion, and I remember the expansion before that. I think it was Chaos or something like that. I mean, ETH was very smooth, but after Exodus, it was a complete mess. I think like the customer support department got over flooded with petitions, stuff like that. But I mean, nowadays we can do anything.
Yeah, the difference between Eve then and now is just it's insane. Absolutely insane.
Absolutely, yeah.
So should we ask the questions that has a huge risk of getting NDA'd? 64-bit client and unified accounts. When are we going to see something like that?
I don't think it's their department, really, to be completely honest, but I don't know.
No, but I'm pretty sure that they would be highly responsible for making it possible, especially with things like the unified account thing, because that would need a whole revamp thing.
Yeah, I mean, we actually had a project ongoing which was actually about having a unified account and having even a unified account between games that CCP runs.
Because Eric and I have been talking about that on several episodes of this show, and we are still hoping that we will see it someday.
Yeah, I mean, that would be great. It would simplify so much for a lot of players.
I know with conversations from other CCPs that the unified account, or master account as I think it's referred to internally, had been developed, or quite, sort of at least fairly heavily developed up to a point, and then they dropped it for reasons, I think, probably down to dev time and like urgency of solving issues with certain things. But I'm fairly certain I know that it was worked on quite a lot.
If I remember correctly, it was called Master User Services or something like that. But it was, I would guess, fairly close. But it was stopped, and there has been no work on it for a while now.
I think the thing is, the nice thing about it, I think, probably is the fact that unlike internal game code, it doesn't end up being like sort of evolving constantly because of new patches and new features coming into the game. So it's more likely that when CCP does actually get the dev time to come back to it, it's not going to be a case of, oh crap, we're going to have to go back to take 5-6 steps backwards and then go from there. They would probably be able to pick it up fairly easily from where they left off.
I mean, we keep all the code that we do. I mean, we have a repository of the code, and none of it is lost. It's literally just a team going in and going through what's been done and going, take it from there.
Can we have USB sticks with the old Incarna code at some point?
I don't know. You might want to talk to Explorer about it. You can do it on FanFest.
We shoot that into space?
No. You give it to the players, and then eventually some crazy Eve player will have actually started a project and developed it and succeeded in making proper walking-in stations in Incarna.
Nah, they pulled the graphic code out for that. Forget it.
Which is why we need the old code.
No one needs the lock-in stations.
The door's not there anymore, man. It's been plastered over.
That's
and
right.
Painted
that
over.
door is closed.
Yeah, we broke the mirror.
See, this is my way of saying.
That was fantastic. Like, I know there was some talk internally about various things that we could do with that, and there was an idea about like all of the drugs and that kind of thing, where you would have to dock in station. The only way to be able to trade drugs and things, would be in station, where you would have to go into one of these lounge rooms and literally avatar to avatar to make like back room deals and things like that. And I just think it would have been so fantastic. It's really
you had me at pole dances.
I just see players sitting there going, "You want to buy some death sticks?"
Oh, jeez.
Do you guys remember? Do you guys remember the latex suit?
We don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, you guys are in denial.
Do you really
I have no
want to go
recollection
down
about
this
that,
rabbit hole live online?
I have no recollection of this.
But that was one of those examples of CCP pretty much pushing the envelope, right? Because it was so ahead of its time. It was pretty much, it felt like it was at least 2 or 3 years too early when it comes to what the whole carbon engine was trying to do in Incarna, right?
Yeah, and I mean, we had prototypes of how easy it was to, create rooms and just get everything, we could have created different kinds of rooms, whether it was race-based or within ships or whatever, and it would just take minutes to create a room and then get the art department to, draw up on it and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, sure, it was a shame that it didn't work out, but it is what it is.
But same thing, right? You still have all those assets somewhere in your files, right? You have them in a cabinet somewhere.
Oh yeah. We keep all of it.
I mean, I've done the walking stations kind of thing before, and gone and bought a drink at the bar and all that kind of thing. The only issue was it wasn't on PC on on the E client, it was via PlayStation Home on the
Yeah, that was
PlayStation Home section of Dust 514.
it kind of lied, right?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I have to say, it was pretty cool.
Michelangelo is saying, why are we asking about all this hardware, software stuff on the back end when all he wants is scan probes to detect cloaky campers?
He's going to have to wait till we get Fuzzy on.
Yeah, you need to get developers on that.
Yeah, I know. See, Arendis corrected him for us. Thanks, Arendis.
Yeah.
Oh, small stupid question. The different brands and other things that CCP is running, right? Like Valkyrie and stuff like that. That's not in the same server house, is it?
No, most of it's on cloud, like Valkyrie, Spark. It's just run from a cloud. We don't operate that, but we only assist if there are issues.
So will we get Eve on the cloud sometime?
We've just done preliminary testing, but I don't think so. We've tried virtualizing parts of it, and we just get unexplained lag that we just, can't figure out why.
Can't replicate the magic.
Yeah, it's just the solar system just lags out without any reason.
You're not going to be able to tie in a bunch of Amazon AWS servers and make them, hold Tranquility up in the way that it's being held up at the moment. Like, it's just not possible.
Yeah, when you look at how some of those systems slice and dice the actual CPU and how small they can get those sub-threads inside of VMware, right, versus what you normally see, I can see how you get lag.
Well, you can instances and stuff, right, which are supposedly, or maybe even are real live physical hardware. So there's certainly the option to do that. But once, at least personally, and a bunch of the people that I talk to in the industry, as soon as you go to something that's running 24/7 and at a relatively high resource usage, the cloud is unbelievably expensive.
Oh yeah, plus
fantastic for things like DevOps, like Valkyrie and Spark, and these things where developers need to be able to spin up instances, and then they don't need to, bug us in operations if they need to do a basic change. They can just do all of that stuff themselves. But as soon as you start to run live things 24/7, yeah, it's crazy expensive.
Can't you build your own?
Yeah. There's certainly hybrid, and that's kind of where the industry is going. Is definitely hybrid, on-premise versus cloud, or not versus, but joined environments, definitely.
Yeah, offload what you can, like for instance the chat, right, and keep in house the critical things. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And by the way, you guys can't hear me because I moused off of Discord. I said
that'd be why.
Yeah, so when you look at the off-prem versus the on-prem, right, taking the chat off-prem and things like that and get that load off there that you don't want on your main servers. When you look at what they do on some of these virtualized environments that you can buy into, I mean, they're even virtualizing the network layer, right? So when you start looking at things related to why do I have strange lag, right? And we've seen it many times, Billy and I, where it's just the way they're designing the network with the virtualization protocols. I mean, even what you think is a physical Ethernet card is a virtualized card, right? It's a software card, so it gets very strange in that world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was Dust actually running on the cloud too?
No, but it was hosted by a different company, though, the batch servers, but everything else, the backend stuff like that was hosted by us.
It's just, I know this might be NDA because you guys haven't released much about that, but if a big title like Dust were to come up again at some point, would you guys then in-house it, or would you think that it was better to actually outsource it again?
I would say 100% outsource.
I think there's been a lot of titles that are kind of would be similar to Dust that have launched fairly recently-ish that have shown to be much more worthwhile to outsource in terms of server, especially you know, in order to actually, especially where ping is a very big factor in the actual gameplay aspect of the product. Like having your own server farms in like multiple areas in the world in order to actually allow people to have like decent pings is really difficult. You know, it's better to probably just go for somebody who's well established in that kind of regard.
The backend for games like this, what we call like a backend server for Dust, for example, you will always need those where the actual simulation goes through, and you of course want that to be as close to the player as possible. Having it in, for example, like with we have it in London, it's not going to be the best performance for like US players or someone in Asia, stuff like that. So you want those servers to be as close to the players as possible, and you want to be able to scale them extremely fast, and that's best done through like outsourcing with Amazon and stuff like that.
Yeah, because having like that's the advantage of Eve, and the fact that we have a 1 Hertz server tick. You know, if someone is the other side of the world and has a 500 millisecond server ping, like it's not that debilitating in terms of the experience.
No, exactly. And I mean, when I started playing E, for example, I mean, I was on a dial-up. Iceland was not that fast getting into like DSL and fiber and stuff like that, but it is now, of course. But I was playing on dial-up, and I really don't remember any lag. But then again, I wasn't in big fleet heads back then, of course.
Alrighty, so I'm going to go around the room, kind of the last calls for everybody to make comments. I'm going to end CCP denormalized and CCP RAM. I'll go to you guys next. Anything you want to share that we kind of missed on the show, but I'll start with you, Caleb, for kind of last words.
Well, I would just like to ask the question. I think it's kind of been out there on the interwebs, but is it finalized whether or not you will be able to make it to FanFest denormalized? Because I'm pretty sure that RAM will be there.
Yeah, I'm there. So when I started with CCP, just a quick note on that, I moved to Iceland. I lived there for 3 years, but now I'm back home in Canada. But I get to fly into Iceland for FanFest a couple times a year, try to arrange them around big parties. That's the fun times to go. So yeah, I'm definitely in Iceland for FanFest this year.
Great. I will owe you a beer, both of you.
I like it.
McLeod, you're up next.
Oh man, I just like to say thank CCP Denormalized and CCP RAM for coming. It was an absolute pleasure having you guys on, and I hope that we have you on at some other point soon, maybe. Or at least keep in touch.
And it looks like we lost video, so I apologize, and I'm not sure why.
Ooh. Dying.
So sorry about that. We lost McLeod's feed and Caleb's feed and Billy's feed.
No, Billy, no.
About DOSing you, but maybe that's not appropriate in this conversation.
What did you say?
Goons maybe were DDoSing you guys, but maybe that's not appropriate, or
no,
maybe that doesn't fit in this.
That'd be serious self-inflicted wound.
Yeah, it's
there's a lot. There's
how that works.
Yeah, there's a lot of bees on this show. I don't know why.
Like,
it was interesting because the video feed disappeared on Twitch, but it didn't disappear from my screen, which was kind of strange.
Twitch flagged McLeod for being too NRA.
There you go. So, and as we talk about this, RJ, you got anything? You've been pretty quiet all day.
I've actually, I'm more on the art side of everything. So, I mean, if we had like, I believe a CCP like blue screen here, I'd probably be like, you couldn't shut me up. But it's been interesting hearing about what's going on, like behind the scenes, hardware wise. But thank you for keeping the hamsters well fed and nourished, guys.
And pointy bits, right? We should get them on one day.
Oh yeah, you guys probably wouldn't be shutting me up.
Let's see. Is Scythe actually paying attention to the show, or is he just blowing up freighters?
I haven't blown up a freighter the entire show, due to the fact that I can't listen to comms and y'all at the same time, and I devoted myself to listening to the show, and I learned a lot today.
Excellent. So yeah, we feel bad. So you can't give us a new update from the front. That's kind of a shame.
I mean, I can check kill boards. Hold on one sec.
I mean, you are
we gotta see how many Aerith kills there are. Hold on.
You are our frontline reporter that's supposed to give us some updates here.
Am I okay? Frontline report. There's Loki's trying to shot our coursers or whatever, leaving the undock, and they're bad at it.
There you go. There you go.
There you go.
Billy, you've been quiet. What do you got?
Yeah, thank you guys for coming on. It's always cool to hear all this technical speak and actually kind of understand what's going on. But yeah, it's good info.
What, you don't get inundated with that enough at work?
So far, Aerith has lost 7 Vindicators.
There you go. That's the Aerith Vindicator count. That market's going through the roof for Vindicators. They're getting jacked up in price as we speak. Yes, I want to give a shout out to a couple people. I want to give a shout out to CCP Falcon and certainly CCP Grendel for helping me communicate with you guys. CCP RAM and CCP Denormalized. They help me set this meeting, so it's great. So I appreciate their help. Certainly, you two. I appreciate you coming on and answering our questions because it's kind of fun to see what it takes to make TQ work. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
It's been an absolute pleasure. We're going to be doing a roundtable at FanFest. So if anyone wants to ask or get clearer answers to any of this, then just by all means come there and talk to us.
Fantastic.
That'd be good.
Any other last words, CCP Denormalized?
Tech stuff doing so yeah, no cool. And at FanFest, by all means, guys, come up, talk to us, ask any questions you want. We're here to help out. So I'd like to.
Fantastic. Thank you both for being on the show, and we want to be respectful of your time. So we're gonna end a little early today. I want to thank everybody for the substitutions that they put in, the subs, not substitutions, the subscriptions. Sure, go ahead. You run down through.
Yeah, Raw for Dog 23. Thank you very much. Out of the way. And Beckman, thank you guys very much for your continued support. It's really, really cool, really awesome.
All right, and all the follows. Thank you much. Everybody say goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All righty, and we're out of here. Thank you.
Hooray.